on behalf of Father David and the friars of the province of Santa Barbara, I extend to all of you the traditional Franciscan greeting of peace and all good. Thank you, dear friars, and you, dear family, friends, and co-workers of Eric, for gathering, many from afar, to pray for him in his transitus. We are here, too, to pray for each other. As is the tradition in my own religious community, our prayerful condolences go first to the family, to you, Beth, Amy, and Jill, as Eric's sisters, and to your extended family, including Eric's surviving aunts and uncles, for whom this funeral is out of the natural order of events. And to you, Sophie, Gabe, Jack and Grace, Theo, Nick, and last but not least, my godson, Nate, his beloved nieces and nephews. And not least of all to you, his Franciscan brothers, with whom he found joy in friary life. And in particular to you novices, his former aspirants, for your desire to serve God and humanity. Inspired people. It has been a long 18 days since Eric's untimely death. News of it pierced our hearts and still does. Small comfort that it is, I find in the midst of my own heart's desolation a growing gratitude for his life, for his friendship, and for his vocation. That gratitude is growing by the day, even by the hour, and by the word, and particularly by Jesus' word to untie him. For that is what the gospel and even Eric's own life call us to today, to untie him, to unravel the mystery not of Eric's death, but of his love, and in the process of doing so, to unbind Eric from our expectations of who he could have been, or who he should have been, or even that he should have been around longer. In doing so, we can receive, I believe, a certain freedom from the burden of his unexpected death. For if we bind ourselves in faith to Christ's words, then death must heed the command to let him go. To let us go. Death will lose its grip on us, not because time heals all wounds, but because Christ's word will be fulfilled. This freedom is what is offered in the gospel of the raising of Lazarus, a gospel that reveals two mysteries operative in Eric's life. These mysteries are of peace. The mystery that the crucified Jesus is no stranger to us, but is indeed all too ubiquitous in our world. And the mystery that the resurrected Christ is too much a stranger to us. You see, in his accepting, not judgmental, and uplifting ways, Eric demonstrated that he was no stranger to the insecure, to those who lacked confidence, to those who were searching, to the hungry, the sick, and the imprisoned, to the immigrant, the elderly, and the poor. In his empathy, he could readily identify the feelings that might surface under such circumstances. But in his own quest for purposefulness, which only came to fulfillment later in his life, he was finally able to see himself in the light of eternal consciousness. He was finally able to hear spoken to himself the words, "Untie him and let him go," and to release himself to believe deeply that he too was a beloved of God. I hope it will be edifying enough for you that I explore these two mysteries as I saw them manifest in Eric's life. Eric and I met in college, where we became fast friends, and already you can tell we were the ultimate odd couple. I still remember how his keen editing helped me improve my comp and lit grade from its midterm nadir, and how when I visited him in Mexico during spring break, his adventurous spirit brought us to the delights of Oaxaca's open-air market, and to a dinner of freshly caught machinango on the beach in Puerto Escondido. After graduation, we lived no closer than a 3-hour drive, but at my first Thanksgiving with the Pilarcik family, I knew I had a best friend for life, and have been humbled ever since to have been considered by Eric's late parents, Bob and Flo, as a second son. It was on subsequent visits to his hometown of Clarkston, Michigan, that Eric's joyful presence was most evident to me. For it was there, as a realtor, that he felt in his own skin. Not because real estate was the family business, indeed it was. And not because he loved different styles of houses, that he did too. For Eric, it was never about the house, let alone the transaction and the money to be made. No, it was always about how he could accompany a person. In real estate, it was about the newlyweds who were buying their first home, the family moving because of a job transfer, the widow downsizing. From the beginning, he was drawn to accompany people through life's emotionally weighty moments. His focus on the interpersonal was on display in remarks he gave at the recent opening of new Franciscan archives. You can see them on YouTube. There he shared that for him, the real treasure he discovered in the archives was not the artifacts themselves, but the people working there. Friar and lay person alike, professionals and volunteers who impressed him because of their dedication to sorting and cataloging documents, photographs, and other items. It was similarly so with his master's thesis at the Franciscan School of Theology. Out of the Ruins, Rebuilding the Alta California Missions, 1880s to 1930s. The title suggests an historical survey, but what really excited Eric about the study was documenting the biographies of people who restored the missions. Indeed, he had a knack for turning any moment he spent with you into a humorous and cherished memory. The laughter was at times generated by his humility, and at other times by his naivete. Like the time he and friend Karen Stefanko rented a stick shift in the Canary Islands, when neither knew how to drive a manual. More than one person has recounted how they never laughed harder than with Eric. Like another college classmate, Lisa Abbott, with whom Eric took ballroom dancing. So hard did they laugh at their ineptitude that the teacher literally threatened to eject them. Whether you were the cashier at Rudy's Market, or the clerk at the post office, Eric would not just chat with you, but joke and banter as if you were pals. It was the same working behind the scenes as a location scout in Hollywood, as he was driving an actor home after the shoot itself. By the way, I think it was Sean Young who declined the offer of a ride the next day. And if you were ever a passenger with Eric driving, you understand why. But oh, how he loved the open road, and preferably driving under a moon roof. The point is that his humility and disarming humor made Eric eminently relatable and approachable. And that was the genius of his assignment as a friar, beginning with his initial placement among elder friars when their house in L.A. would be closed, including selling niches in the mausoleum here, continuing through his work and vocations and what would have been his next assignment and formation. His greatest gift was ultimately not an interpersonal one, but a spiritual one, accompanying people in a deep journey to the center of their being in the midst of a chaotic world. And he was so good at it because he could just knock through the flat to the heart of the matter. He loved everyone for who they were, just as he was relaxed enough to go with the flow. He could readily empathize with you and would offer you a new perspective in which you could see your potential. In this way, he was often a source of succor to those who felt plagued by the system or fated in life. In other words, people today who might feel the nails of the crucified Jesus pinning them down to a place that was not life-giving. One college summer, Eric chose to work with juvenile offenders under detention and didn't flinch when the adolescent before him said that in a flash he could stab Eric in the neck with a ballpoint pen. Eric recently returned to that ministry when he volunteered from St. Monica's Parish in L.A. at a juvenile detention center in the Santa Monica Hills. He always gave people the benefit of the doubt and was always affirming. Keep at it. You're doing great, he might say, even if your confidence didn't waver. He was a dependable booster, providing emotional support in a time of transition. He would cheer you on from afar with spontaneous text messages and random souvenirs. Ultimately, Eric's playfulness was fundamentally a way of regarding, accepting, and lifting up other people in a world of need. It was a way of taking on a persona alike to what the Japanese author Shusaku Endo called a wonderful fool. A person who was neither heroic nor strong for fear of frightening away those who doubted themselves, feared rejection, or felt spiritually adrift, but whose own humility and sacrifice could serve to bind people together, pass along life's inevitable Via Dolorosa, unafraid and not alone. His friendly, playful, and cheerful exchanges were balm in the face of life's misfortunes, even the nails of the cross. Like Mary with Martha and Jesus with Lazarus, Eric revealed that the hidden heartbreaks of life have no ultimate power over us if we would but bind ourselves to one another. So it turns out that we were the real treasures in the archive of memories that Eric cultivated all these years. But did he equally see himself as a treasure? Did he celebrate in himself what he celebrated in others? It was shared last night in the vigil service that Eric didn't like to receive praise. Neither did he belittle himself. But for decades, I have wrestled with whether he thought too little of himself. He found a lot in a little when it came to other people, but often enough he seemed not to do so with himself. Until, that is, he saw himself in a Franciscan habit. When people looked up to Eric, he felt unworthy. He didn't feel he had
what he thought to be impressive in other people. Self-sacrifice and zeal were two attributes to which he once pointed in this regard. He sought an inner strength, deeply rooted in faith, that would provide an antidote to the current of least resistance in his life that led him to choose what was easy and conventional at times. And at times, that current could become an undertow and devolve into procrastination. He envied the passion and courage with which others seemed to live their vocation to love and to serve God. He wanted to be tuned into God's will. To do what God wanted to do with him. But he spent so much time focused on others that some of us found it difficult to get to what was happening within him. He would readily deflect attention from himself, and attempts to uncover Eric in conversations with Eric were often diverted. This was by no means a character flaw in Eric. It was instead, I believe, simply a disposition born of frustration over lacking a clear focus and purpose in life. Shortly into his successful real estate career, Eric wondered what the real purpose of his life was. Even then, as with his recent vocations where he knew it could never be about producing numbers, over the years he would return to this question of purpose. And though he gave of himself to others so gratefully and joyfully, he struggled to see that his life made a critical contribution. While he didn't have an agenda for you or for your life, he also didn't know what the agenda was for his. He found it hard to see himself as the protagonist of his own story. So he became all the more the accompanitor or protagonist of our stories. As we might expect of the writer he wanted to be, or of a news reporter, he found other people's stories more interesting than his own. If he were interested, he would say it was largely because of you in his life. If his interest in Hollywood was ultimately about writing his own story, and I think it was, then Becoming a Franciscan was the screenplay he never wrote. Doing so authentically becoming a Franciscan, provided an attempt to learn that more often than not, it is other people who discern their vocation for you, insofar as you are able to minister to them in the moment, in large and small ways. You can see the clarity to which his Franciscan life brought him in his beautiful essay called The Big Brown Wedding Ring, which he wrote during his novitiate year and was published subsequently in the September-October issue of the Way magazine, I think in 2008. In that essay, he writes that meeting you Franciscans for the first time was like, quote, seeing a living, breathing unicorn. You were something mythological to him. And the encounters evoked a connection to purpose that surprised him. All he had ever done, like volunteering at a homeless shelter from St. Monica's as well as visiting youth detention centers, became infused with deeper meaning. And then he entered Brother Arturo's tailor shop. And here I quote the essay.
Brother Arturo made skillful alterations. Then I turned to see myself in the full-length mirror. I saw a reflection of myself. From what looked like 13th century Europe, the same me, but completely different. I was stunned, and it was powerful. It might be like a new military recruit seeing him or herself in a military uniform, or a bride or a groom seeing him or herself for the first time in wedding clothes. It's partially about realizing the future in a very visual sense and reimagining yourself as part of something different, new and larger, deeper and older than yourself. It's also a glimpse into the past, the present, and eternal all at the same time. He could have been speaking of looking into the tomb and seeing Lazarus come out. In writing, I was stunned and it was powerful. Eric was untied from any false expectations of the self under which he might have labored through life. He was set free. He was set free from the quest for a purpose. Because at least symbolically, he realized that his purpose was tied to the person in front of him. Whether that was your need or his reflection in the mirror. He realized, and in a flash, how deeply he too was a beloved child of God, just as he was. And when you know you are beloved, you can endure everything and anything. I began my life with Eric at St. Edward's Hall in the center of the campus of the University of Notre Dame. If you will allow me one last moment, on your behalf, let me end this portion of our life with Eric with a brief return trip. For the altar inscription in St. Ed's Chapel, the chapel of St. John and St. Edward the Confessor, comes from today's Gospel. It says, Magister adest et vocat te, meaning the teacher is here and asking for you. It quotes Martha's exhortation of Mary. And in that mirrored moment of the habit, Eric saw himself in light of this exhortation. Get up. The teacher is here and asking for you. He loves you in his accepting and uplifting ways, for he has come not to judge the world, but to save it. Be not bound to disappointment and travail, but bind yourself to the teacher. And in this habit in particular, to both the crucified Jesus that Francis embraced, and to the resurrected Christ who calls you into eternal life. For your most meaningful purpose has come from the very person in front of you, yourself. And I am with you, within you, and before you.
In this way, I hope to have bound Eric to the resurrection, and through his life, you to it. If we are to countenance the reality of this world where the crucified Jesus is no stranger, where so many are subject to injustice, rejection, and abandonment, then we ought not let the resurrected Christ remain a stranger. Each of us can look into the mirror of our life with Eric and receive from him the ultimate gift of knowing, as beloved ourselves, that our most meaningful purpose in life comes from serving the very person in front of us, be that our spouse or our co-worker, our child or another's, a stranger or a friend. This Franciscan vocation director has helped us to discern that our vocation is to be moved by the person in front of us. Martha in front of Mary, Mary in front of Jesus, Jesus in front of Lazarus, Eric in front of us, you in front of me in front of you. Eric did feel unworthy when people looked up to him. But when he looked up to the mirror upon down to heaven, he might have looked up to himself for the first time. Something changed in him. Stunned, he felt powerful, worthy, called, beloved. Swept in that moment into eternal consciousness. It was freed for life in the Spirit and bound to the resurrected Christ forevermore. "25 years ago, Eric wrote to me in a letter, quote, I hope, parenthetically, I know, almost as if to doubt himself, but to express his desire. I hope, I know, we'll be there for each other for our lifetime. Indeed, 34 years with a best friend is enough for a lifetime. If I too bind myself to the resurrected Christ in the way that Eric did, indeed, I have already been moved by him for a lifetime more. Peace and all good to you, dear friend and brother. Eternal rest grant unto him, O Lord, and let perpetual life shine upon him. May his soul and the souls of all the faithful departed, to the mercy of God, rest in peace.